Hey Geography peeps, so Brazil is one of the largest countries in the world. Obviously, I won't be able to cover everything within about 10 minutes. I'll try to do my best, but in the meantime, soccer, monkeys, Amazon, Ronaldo and samba songs, capoeira, anacondas, carnival,
Ronaldo?
and attractive people that kind of have like tan
We need
skin.
to stop.
Dude,
Yeah.
that's
come
fucked up, man. That's fucked up.
on. We have two Ronaldos.
Ronaldo, no, Cristiano Ronaldo is great.
Yeah.
Nothing about Cristiano Ronaldo. It's just that he's not Brazilian.
He's not our
He's
Ronaldo.
Portuguese,
No.
all right? But okay, let's
Let's keep going. No, yeah, that's it. We just had to say.
Yeah, something parenthesis. All right.
Oh, come on, guys, you knew that was coming.
It's time to learn geography.
Now! Hey everybody, I'm your host Barbie. I guess that's a thing now. And after weeks of anticipation, we finally finished the Brazil video. And you know how we start these things. Let's dissect the flag. The flag of Brazil has a green field with a yellow rhombus in the middle and a blue disc in the center with 27 stars scattered throughout the disc and the country's motto depicted on a white band sprawled across the blue disc. Some people might tell you that the green represents forests and yellow represents gold, but yeah, that's not really true. The green and yellow are actually inspired from the former imperial flag of Brazil, which was derived from two royal households, the green representing the House of Braganza for King Dom Pedro I, and the yellow for the House of Habsburg that his wife Maria Leopoldina came from. The blue disc and the stars are what make up the most fun part of this flag. Each star represents one of the 27 states of Brazil. Furthermore, they are all separated into 9 different constellations that you can typically see in the southern hemisphere. Straddling across the blue disc is a banner with the country's motto, Ordem e Progresso, which means order and progress. A flag with stars representing each state in the country. Ah, Brazil, I think there's some people that can gel well with that. Now here's where things get a little fun, because each section of Brazil kind of has its own little story. But first, Brazil is the largest country in the South American continent. If you grew up in Latin America, you would have been told that both South and North America are together one continent, but for pragmatic definitional reasons, we're just going to treat South America as a separate entity, as its own continent. Brazil's domain stretches all the way from the Atlantic coast and deep into the interior of the continent. Brazil is bordered by every single South American country except for Ecuador and Chile. You could also technically say that Brazil borders France. Why? Because of this little guy. French Guiana. That's right, this is not a country, but rather an overseas territory of France. It's okay, raise your hand if you just learned that. You're learning. The country's capital is the aptly named Brasilia, located slightly inland in the central west region of Brazil, and actually administers itself in its own federal district, much like Washington, D.C. Brasilia was actually built in 1960 as they were switching from the old capital, Rio de Janeiro. That's right, it's pronounced Rio de Janeiro, not Rio de Janeiro. Get it right, we're not in Mexico, this is Portuguese, not Spanish. This was done in an attempt to provide a more regional neutrality for the rest of the states in Brazil by centralizing the capital. Brazil is divided into 27 federative units, 26 of which are states and 1 federal district, which is where the capital resides. Each state and region of Brazil has their own unique flavor that they bring to the table, and we'll discuss more about that in the demographics, but essentially it kind of goes like this. We grow food. We got all the money. We are so black. We are so white. Stop cutting our trees. In terms of disputes, Brazil has 2 disputed areas with Bolivia on the Mamoré River and 2 disputed areas with Uruguay on the Uruguay River and in the Masoyer Rivera that nobody cares about. Funny backstory, Uruguay actually used to be part of Brazil, known as the Cisplatina province, yada yada yada. There was a war.
Did you know that we had territories in dispute with other countries?
I don't think I did.
Yeah,
Did
no,
you?
I know.
That's new. That's new to me too.
Yeah.
Okay, nice.
But I mean, we are not at war, so
Right,
it's
yeah,
just.
yeah.
I mean, from what we see on the map, it's just like a little island, but
Right.
yeah.
When you think of Brazil, everybody just kind of automatically defaults to one image, the Amazon. And yes, the Amazon is a very imperative factor to the nation's domain. However, there's a lot more to it in terms of landscape and terrain. First of all, about 60% of the entire Amazon rainforest is located in Brazil, mostly in the north region, and of course, no surprise, consists of the most heavily compact ecoregion on Earth. Out of all the 10 million species of animals and insects known to human beings, about half of them call the Amazon rainforest home. Many of the species that have yet to be discovered are still lingering about in the deep, uncharted depths of the Amazon today. Now, we all know that there's a huge deforestation problem going on in Brazil in the Amazon to provide more agricultural land. However, even Brazil's own citizens are harshly criticizing the action. It's a little tricky, though, because with Brazil's rapidly growing population, more resources are demanded of the people. So it's kind of like, we get it, it's bad, but I mean...
What do you think about the Amazon forest and all the, burning land? I don't know. What do you think it's... I think with regards to Amazon, the Amazon forest here, right? Much people think that like that Europe and America has a say in it, right?
Yeah.
I think it should be sovereign and it should be a problem from Brazil and presidents all over the century, right? In the 21st century, they have been not taking care of Amazon forest. I don't think they done a great job doing it, here in Brazil. That's my point of view here, at least. And that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we do. Every government we have deforestation in the Amazon forest. Some years is better, some years is worst, and I mean, usually we only talk about it when it's a right government in power. Yeah, because for example, right now we have the last 2 years are the worst years so far, and but we have a leftist president, so we don't hear anything on the news. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad.
Yeah, I feel like with Lula, right? That's our president, our current president. Nobody talks about the deforestation of the Amazon forest. But when Bolsonaro was in office, right? Everyone was talking about it. The media, the singers, the artists, the actors, right? They were all, with the claim that the Amazon forest was burning, right? Burning to the ground.
Yeah, we'll try to put a graph on the screen just so you guys can see the difference between the years. But yeah, nowadays it's horrible.
Yeah.
But I mean, what do you want us to do? Our country is growing and we need to provide you people with more stuff. Use alternative methods! Like what? We're working on it! Otherwise, outside of the Amazon, the rest of the country has a vast array of contrasting scenery almost equally as fascinating. Along the coast, you have the Mata Atlantica, or the Atlantic Forest, the Cerrado, or the tropical savannas in the center. This is also the area where most farms and ranches can be found. Also, keep in mind, Brazil is one of the top countries in meat production and exports. In the south, you have the Araucaria, or the pine evergreen forests. In the north, you have the small mountains, especially close to the border of Venezuela, in which you can find one of the most notable natural landmarks being the tri-point border between Venezuela, Guyana, and Brazil, Mount Roraima, even though Brazil only owns about 5% of the mountain. But still, it counts! Roraima is one of the strangest looking flat-top plateau mountains with vertical cliffs almost perpendicular to the ground, earning it the label as one of the hardest mountains to climb. Fun side note, Mount Roraima was one of the areas that inspired the scenery for the Pixar movie Up, which is a great movie. By the way, go ahead, watch it. And with that said, Pixar and Disney, you can't sue them for copyright infringement rights for...
And there is actually one other interesting thing about Monte Roraima, that's how we call it, is that I heard that the animals that live on top of the mount, they are actually more related to the animals that live in Africa than to the animals that live below the top of the mountain, because when the continents is separated, they were isolated there. So there was
nowhere to go.
Yeah, exactly. So they are more related to you can find more correlations with animals in Africa than to the animals that live on the bottom of the mountain. Yeah.
No, yeah. Brazil is so big, right? I've been to Northeast, I've been to the South, I've been to the Midwest here in Brazil. It's called Central West, and I live in the Southeast. I've never been to the North, but I wish I could visit the Amazon forest. That should be my first spot in the North region here in Brazil.
In my corner box here, because in accordance with fair use limitation rights, I commented and gave a critique on your material. Just letting you know, you can't sue me. One of the most remarkably bizarre and unusual spots of the country, though, would have to be the famous flooded deserts of Lençóis Maranhenses. This place, located on the north coast of the Maranhão state, is almost alien-like, as there are virtually no places like it on Earth. Essentially, it's a sand dune desert with abundant lagoons speckled throughout the entire region. Although it gets a lot of rainfall yearly,
I have never.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's really cool. Yeah, it's even better than the images. I mean, when you get
when did you go?
It was like maybe 11 or 12. But my wife, she went there, I believe, 2 months ago, 1 month ago.
2 months ago.
Yeah. It's really an amazing place, and the sand is like super thin, and there is something that is really hard because when you go down to the water and then you need to climb back up, it's extremely hard because the sand is so soft that when you step on it, your foot just goes, into the sand. So it's like extremely hard to climb back up. It's really tiring.
Nice.
But it's an amazing place.
No, it's definitely on my to go list here. I have never been to Lençóis Maranhenses. That's how we call it here. I think it's funny that Spanish people don't learn Portuguese as much as we learn Spanish.
Yeah.
We Portuguese speakers learn Spanish, right? It's kind of funny. But I've been to Natal, right, which is a city in the northeast of Brazil. I think Maranhão is on the northeast, or is it? Does it start in? No, I think it's northeast Maranhão. I think the north, right, the north region here in Brazil, it starts with Pará. There's another city, the northeast of Brazil. We do have those waves, right, on the sand, right? And I don't know how you call it. It's called duna here, right?
Yeah.
It's similar, but it's not Lençóis Maranhenses, right? Lençóis Maranhenses is like,
It's completely different.
yeah, nice.
Nonetheless, the area draws in thousands of tourists yearly as it contains the almost paradoxical juxtaposition of elements in its scenery. It's not every day that you see a flooded desert.
How do you get there? Like, do you go to São Luís, right?
Yeah, you have to go to São Luís, and then you have to take a car or a bus or whatever. It's like a 3 hours drive to a city that's close to it. And then when I went, my parents, they rented a car, but my wife, I'm not sure how she went there. I don't know if they took a bus or whatever. But yeah, it's far. It's not that easy. But yeah, I mean, usually people when they come to Brazil,
right? I was looking at
yeah, it's the city. It's called Barreirinhas. But yeah, I always recommend when people comment about Brazil, they always say, "Oh, Rio and whatever," and I'm like, "Yeah, Rio, it's really nice." But if you want to see like something
Real Brazil,
really nice,
incomparable, right?
yeah, exactly. Because I mean, Rio, it's beautiful. Have you ever been to Rio?
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, Rio, it's an amazing place, but it doesn't compare. I mean, Lençóis Maranhenses, I believe, is the most beautiful place in Brazil.
In Brazil, I have been to Iguaçu Falls.
Oh yeah, me too.
Iguaçu Falls, the landscapes are beyond imagination.
Yeah.
I haven't been to Lençóis. It may top.
Yeah,
It may
will for sure.
it may top Iguaçu Falls. It's still the most beautiful place I've ever been, Iguaçu Falls, because it's something. It's magnificent.
Yeah, it's
right?
like Niagara Falls, but much bigger. But
Much better.
It is bigger. Yeah, it is.
It's bigger and it has different landscapes. It has different falls. The
Yeah.
falls are different, right? As if you think about Niagara Falls, it's just one rounded fall, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's just one place.
I wanna go to Niagara Falls too.
Super long. Yeah.
Let's talk about the Brazilian people. Biscoito, bolacha, biscoito, bolacha. Yeah, we'll explain what that means in a little bit. But first, now of course Brazil is incredibly diverse, but before we get into that little pie graph thingamajiglet that we always do here in the demographics section, I feel like it's very crucial to mention one important thing about Brazil's people. Now, everybody knows that one of the most dramatically unique traits of Brazil would have to be its people. When asked, what do you think a Brazilian looks like? The stereotype is somebody with a perfectly bronzed, toned body and with slight Germanic features. One reason why this stereotype has been perpetuated so extensively is because, in a strange way, it's kind of true. Over the course of a few hundred years since colonization, Brazil's population has actually virtually invented an entirely new race that never exactly existed before, and it makes up nearly half of the entire population. I'm talking about the Pardo people. Now, although the definition is vague and up
Bochileiros.
for relative dispute, essentially this is the easiest way I can describe it. Pardo people are kind of like people that are either too white to be black or too black to be white, and there's probably a little bit of Amerindian in there. That being said, now let's jump into the pie graph. Brazil has about 202 million people, making it the fifth most populous country in the world, right behind Indonesia. About 47% of the people identify as white, about 43% identify as Pardo, about 8% are black, 1.5 Asian, and a very small portion, about 0.5% of the population, are Amerindian. Speaking of Asians, at about 1.5 million strong, Brazil is actually the country with the largest Japanese population outside of Japan. About 70% of whom live in the city of Sao Paulo. Asians have actually historically been migrating to Brazil for centuries.
We are actually recording this video in the neighborhood of Liberdade here,
Yeah.
which is the Japanese neighborhood in São Paulo, which has great food, has great culture. You can see the light bulbs, right, on the street as Japan does. It's pretty much Liberdade.
Yeah, if you go to the stores on this neighborhood, some people they speak very poor Portuguese because sometimes they came from other places, and they
Japanese.
yeah, and it's not only, I mean, it's Asian in general, right? Chinese, Japanese, yeah.
We do have Koreans and Chinese.
Yeah, and it's funny because sometimes you have like a guy on the store reading a newspaper, and the newspaper is in Japanese or Chinese or whatever. But yeah, it's a really nice place on the city.
Centuries. In terms of socio-regional distinctions, Brazil has quite the buffet of ethnic enclaves. For one, you can typically find more black people in the north, and especially in the Bahia state, where they make up over half of the entire population. This is also the area where you can disputably find some of the best capoeira masters in the world, as it is believed to have originated in this area. In the south, and more specifically in the Rio Grande do Sul state, you have one of the largest white populations in the entire country, with immigrants coming from places like Germany, Italy, and the Netherlands. In fact, many of these places have remained relatively untouched by the rest of Brazil, and many of the communities still retain the mother language of the country the members of the community came from. Oh, and there's a joke in Brazil that nobody has met anybody from the state of Acre. It's so far and secluded that you may as well just call it North Bolivia. It's mine, Brazil! Nope, too bad, we won it in the war, it's still ours, deal with it. Then of course you have the various native tribal groups. There are about 240 tribes that a little over 900,000 people claim to be a part of ethnically. The government has recognized 690 territories and reservations for these various people groups that make up about 13% of the entire country's landmass, nearly all of it localized in the Amazon rainforest. Brazil's governmental agency for tribal peoples has a list of about 80 uncontacted tribal groups that deliberately choose to remain disconnected from the rest of the world. The governmental agency speculates that there are still many unnamed, undiscovered tribes currently living in the vast, uncharted forests of the Amazon. Culture-wise, it really depends on where you are in Brazil, but everybody knows that Brazil kind of has a very vibrant way that they carry themselves out to the rest of the world. The center of culture.
It is crazy because whether the person looks white or looks black, you can tell if the person is Brazilian, right? Somehow, right?
Yeah. And there is a fun fact that actually the Brazilian passport, it's the most valuable passport in the black market, because basically everyone can be Brazilian. You know, if you see a guy that looks 100% Japanese or Chinese, yeah, he can be Brazilian. Yeah. Or you can have a white guy with blonde hair and blue eyes. That you may, oh, that's a German. No, that's also a Brazilian. So yeah, you have everything here in Brazil.
Culture disputably being Rio de Janeiro and the economic capital being Sao Paulo. Most of the population lives within driving distance of the coasts, so there is in a sense a prevalent beach culture, especially for the people on the east side of the country. Not everybody in Brazil loves soccer. In fact, many places prefer basketball, and skateboarding has actually been a huge thing that's been exploding over the past few years. And no, not everybody has been
What do you think about that? Do you think... I don't think basketball here is that popular.
Yeah.
I think volleyball is even more popular than basketball. Football takes the lead, of course. But there are not that many people who like basketball here.
Yeah, I mean,
if they like basketball here, they are usually watching the American basketball, right? The NBA.
Yeah. They watch usually the NBA. And I mean, football, soccer, it is the most...
It's
popular.
football.
It's football for us also. But yeah, it's the most popular sport in Brazil. But for example, me, when I was in school, I used to play volleyball. I didn't play football there. But yeah, I prefer volleyball. But I would say volleyball is the second.
I think it's the second,
Yeah.
Oh, and another thing, there's currently a war going on in Brazil. It's been very brutal. It's been going on for decades, and it's getting quite intense right now. I'm talking about the cookie war. In Brazil, people will ridicule you if you pronounce the word for cookie differently from them, and especially it's a whole Rio versus Sao Paulo thing. People in Sao Paulo will call it bolacha, and the people in Rio will call it biscoito. This conflict has led to the violence and deaths, leading in the victimization of people caught in the crossfire, and you almost fell for it, didn't you? Now let's talk about their relationships. Now, Brazil kind of gets along with everyone, but he's kind of like that friend that ventures off and does whatever he wants while you wait in the hallway until he comes back from doing whatever he's doing. First off, pretty much all of their neighbor nations get along with them, although Argentina has a huge competitive hatred for Brazil when it comes to soccer. But all of that aside, they have good relations and trade policies. Then, just like mentioned before the Angola video, they get along with other nations of the former Portuguese Empire like Angola, Mozambique, Sao Tome and Principe, Cabo Verde, and so on. They even get along with Portugal and have no bitterness towards the former former colonization. Now, when it comes to the US, for centuries they've been good friends and have a deep history of trade and alliances. However, recently Brazil has been kind of diddle-doddling off, making friends with other people that kind of give the US the old shifty eye. Then we have Venezuela and Cuba. Brazil has sided with the Venezuelan government more in the past few decades and has built a $1.5 billion port in Cuba. Then
Yeah, that's so sad, man.
Yeah.
That we have to deal with this. We have to deal with our government spending money on other governments' necessities, whatever, right? It's just ridiculous, right? Cuba, for instance, there's a famous saying here that people love the way Cuba governs their people, right? But they will never move to Cuba, right?
Yeah.
They will never move out to Cuba, especially people from the left, right? I think they are the only ones who say that, right?
Yeah.
Iran. Recently, Brazil has been testing the waters on attempting to build ties with them, although they haven't really improved much recently. Nonetheless, Brazil is quite the popular guy. Not many people dislike Brazil, except for maybe the Brazilians in Brazil that may complain about their own country's administrative affairs, but that's a lesson you'll have to learn by talking to an actual Brazilian person, not me. Plus, we're almost out of time. In conclusion, Brazil is so much more than just the Amazon and soccer, and we didn't even scratch the surface of Brazil in this video. And to find out more, I recommend just talk to a Brazilian. Just remember which side of the cookie you're on. Stay tuned.
Overall, good video.
Yeah.
I think he described Brazil in a really great way. The first thing, Ronaldo, right? He posed Cristiano Ronaldo, Portuguese football player. I would like to emphasize football because we call it football.
Yeah.
American calls football
Soccer.
right? So I would like to emphasize that Cristiano Ronaldo is a Portuguese player. He should not be on the video at first. He should be the Brazilian Ronaldo, right?
Yeah, the video started bad with Ronaldo, but then the rest of it was quite good. I think he said that we had the largest population of Japanese outside of Japan, but I believe that's also true for Italians and Germans, if I'm not mistaken. We also have the largest population of them outside of their country. Because we are much like the US. I mean, we got people from everywhere on the beginning of the country, right? And we also had slaves, the same thing as the US. But I believe actually here was a little bit worse. And I think we were the last country to abolish slavery, if I'm not mistaken. But the thing is, we are much more mixed than the US, for example. It's very common to see people with a lighter skin tone because of so much mixing. And
you can never tell if the person, right? The ancestors are black or white.
Yes, exactly. And for example, in the US, you have some African Americans that are like really black, and it's very rare to find that here because we are really mixed. But
me for instance, right?
Yeah.
Look, my father is kind of black. My mother is kind of white. Yeah, they are not black and white.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And my family came from Portugal, so I'm kind of white. And there's nothing on me, but yeah.